everyone. My name is Megan Johnson. I'm a coach, I'm a writer, I'm a speaker, and I'm the host of May We Know Them, which is a video podcast interview series where we bring strong women together to share their stories. It's an opportunity for all of us to both see and be seen. So I'm so excited today because our guest today is, oh my goodness, is such a rock for me in my life. Like she reminds me of who the fuck I am and keeps me grounded, and does so in such a strong and playful way that it just makes me giddy with giggles. And reminds me that we can actually go through life this way, having fun, and it doesn't have to be so hard and arduous and like what if life wasn't meant to suck, so she's such a great reminder of that for me. And I turn to her anytime I'm in a little bit of drama and not sure what to do in my life, which is perfect because that's what she's going to be talking to us about today. Her experience with just making decisions and how she does it, what she's learned from that. So our guest today, Jennie Wolfe. Jennie, thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah. Real quick, for anyone who's watching this, a way to get the most out of your experience, spending some time with us here during your day, I would say have some paper nearby and a pencil, and anything that resonates with you, especially if it's something that kind of like hits you like, oh, that hurt, write it down. There's probably a reason you needed to hear it today. And then in the comments of this video or wherever you're watching, come find one of us, send us an email, however, share what you've taken away. And it might be something that hits you right in the moment. It might be a week later where you're doing something like putting your groceries away and you have an aha. We'd love to hear about it and keep this conversation going.
Yes. Yeah.
So with that, Jennie, I'd love to hear what was going on in your life. Like what was normal for you before you had this realization around, making decisions, like how to approach that.
I would say that I was working in a corporate career, and I knew like internally that I didn't want to be there, yet I was not honoring that at all. So I continued because I was getting paid. I kept on getting paid more. I kept on getting incentivized to stay there. I looked externally. A lot of my friends were actually losing their jobs or having a hard time getting their jobs. So I was like, I should be grateful and I should stay here. So I always found a reason to stay from a logistical standpoint. And so my decision was to avoid my internal compass and just do what I felt like was logistically right. Like I went with my mind instead of my heart. And I did that for years. And I was actually trying to think about how long I actually did this for. And it's hard to determine, right? Because I felt like I was, I worked up in that business. I'd been in that career for about 10 years, but I'm not really sure. I would say, I know it was years that I ignored this part of myself that I really wanted to leave. And so I just continued to stay. And then one day I created space in my schedule. And that was probably the biggest thing that made a difference for me. And this is something that is really, now I always remember this, is that I was working really long hours and I was working a lot, and I was pretty exhausted. Like, outside looking in, it looked great. But the ironic thing is that I was working as a personal trainer. So I was a personal training sales manager. So I was like, talking to people about health all the time. And yet I was not really healthy. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't making time for myself to really work out. I wasn't really eating well because I was working long hours. And so it started to like layer on, right? Because it was like, I had this feeling that I didn't want to be there. And then I started packing on with like, now I feel like I'm being an imposter because I'm preaching health, but I'm not living it. And so I just was like, there was one day that I was like, I'm going to go on vacation. Like, I had not taken a vacation. I was like, I'm going to go on vacation. And I decided to actually go on a month-long vacation and do a yoga intensive retreat. Because of course I'm still very logistical and systemized. So it couldn't just be a leisure vacation. It had to be something where I was actually doing something, which I know a lot of people tend to love that too. And so I went on a month-long vacation, and I really booked this without telling my boss, because my plan, even though I didn't say this out loud, was that as soon as I tell him, he's going to be like, yeah, you can't work here anymore. And then I wouldn't have to actually own it and quit. He was just going to like fire me. That was my plan. Yeah. And so I told him, I was like, hey, so I'm actually doing my yoga certification. I'm leaving for a month. And I remember sitting down with him, and he's like, okay, cool. Well, we have someone that can kind of take over your slack when you're gone, or, you know, when you take over the stuff that you're not doing when you're gone, and we're excited to have you back. And I remember walking out of that office and just being like, shit, like, what am I going to do?
Like, wait, are you sure you don't want to fire me?
Yeah. I was like, are you sure that's okay? Like, I can like leave for a month. And yeah, so that didn't work. So I still went. And while I was there, so I had that space, I had that time away. And that was when I really realized, like, I just didn't want to be there anymore. Like, obviously it brought me I learned so much from that job, and I wouldn't be where I am today without having it. Yet, like, I just knew I didn't want to be there anymore. And I could tell then from actually creating that space and kind of separating myself from it, that I was able to see a little bit differently. And that's kind of when I started to get in touch with this, like, other part of making decisions from a different place, that it didn't have to be logistical, that it didn't have to make sense. I didn't have to explain it to other people. I didn't have to have the whole plan laid out in front of me. And yeah, so I can tell you a little bit about like the moment that I kind of had this realization, which was like a couple weeks into this yoga teacher training, and we were meditating every day. So, and this was the most meditation that I had ever done. And so we were really getting connected, like from a spiritual standpoint. And I loved that.
Yeah. Like connected in turn. Yeah.
Like, which is like, I think, you know, we can look at like kind of any, I think, successful like entrepreneur typically has some sort of contemplative practice. So whether it's like meditation or it's journaling, or sometimes it might even just look working with a coach, but something where you're doing some reflection and you're actually creating that space, and you're not just in the doing all the time. Like, you're actually reflecting, okay, what have I done? And also like, where do I want to go? And that's why journaling can be so powerful. It's not something that I do on a regular basis, but more of like meditation is my thing, but it could be anything. And that was when I started doing that, you know, every single day, and really getting in touch with that. And I had this visual in my meditation that just like, it threw me, like, I was just like, whoa. So I was sitting in my meditation, and I was kept on going back and forth. I had told people there that I wanted to quit my job at this point, but I was too scared to do it. And I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to do, but I just knew I wanted to quit. That was like the main thing. And, I was sitting there, and I had this visual of me jumping off of this cliff, and I could see myself doing it. I could see myself jumping off this cliff, and I wasn't scared. Yeah. So like, I was jumping off this cliff, and I was watching myself jump, and then like fall. And then I was like in my own body, and I was falling, and I was looking up, and I could see these birds flying over me. And I wasn't scared at all. Like, I was just like, I felt super free and super like, just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And it was just this huge release. And it was like, I came out of that meditation, and I like was like, okay, I don't have to know. The fact that I was facing up, and I interpreted all this stuff for myself.
Yeah, as we do. Yeah.
I made it up. And this is the thing, right? Like, we are making machines. And this is what I've learned to do, is I at least will make up something that actually serves me. So this is what I made up at the time. If I'm going to make up something, I'm going to make it up that serves me. So I was like, okay, I'm looking up. So that means that I don't have to know every single step in front of me. Yeah. And the other thing that I made up was that like, I just got to jump and I will figure it out and I'm going to be okay. That like, I got me. And so, yeah, I got out of my meditation. I wrote an email and I quit my job. And I was like, I was scared, obviously, but I was also like so free. It was like in that moment after I did it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
There's so many things I just want to like reflect back and touch on. The things that I'm hearing you say, one are, the creating space. And I think our world today, we are just, yes, we're meaning making machines, but we also relate to ourselves as machines. So we just go, go, go.
Yeah.
And it's become this normal that, I know with people, clients that I talk to, we start talking about like, what do they want to create in their lives? And the muscle with dreaming has been so atrophied because they don't have that, they haven't created the space to think about themselves. You mentioned that it was a period of years before this aha took place. And I imagine that's pretty normal because we often, we have to get tired of our own shit before we'll take that leap. And, we have to almost come to a breaking point or a point where like, we can't keep piling on. So yeah, that might take years. So anybody listening to this, you might be in the place where you love your job and that's great and all the things. And, we're not saying that, go quit your job and whatnot. And there may come a time where it's like, oh, this actually isn't working for me. And just at that realization, you might not make the choice there. It might take another 3-4 years. That was my experience. I really loved being a teacher until one day, like something clicked and I went, ooh, this doesn't feel like it did, or like I think it should feel. And so I did all these things over here, actually put more on my schedule, thinking I just need to do more. It'll light my fire again. Yeah. And it took 8 years before I finally took that leap.
Yeah. 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 And as you're saying that, I'm realizing too that like sometimes it's like our intuition is telling us, or whatever you want to call it, that like we have outgrown the space that we're in. And sometimes it's not actually a matter of leaving the thing. So whether it's like the job, the relationship, the town, or what your house, like, anything, it's sometimes not about leaving it, but it's sometimes about reinventing that our relationship to it. And I've realized that too through like different things that I've done and working with different clients. And I'm sure you have too, that like sometimes we think that the solution is to leave, but really sometimes it's just to reinvent. And I think that that's the place where we can really start to rely more on our intuition and start to see what feels right. And you brought up a good point, is that like that go, go, go mentality is the very thing that keeps us from being in touch with not only our intuition, but like knowing what we want, right? Like I'm kind of like in this place right now that I've been listening to Start With Why again by Simon Sinek, which like love that book. And I'm realizing like, yeah, start with why. Also, I think a big disconnect that we have is like actually start with what you want, because we're so disconnected from the very thing that we want that we just get used to being in that default pattern because it's comfortable. And so it was a lot more comfortable for me to stay in my job, just like for you, Megan, like it was comfortable for you to stay there because, and then you rationalize it. And that's the very thing that we do. So your rational, like the logistics is not your wants, right? Oh, it makes sense I should stay because I got a degree in this, or because I'm getting paid good money and I've been here for so long and I'm loyal, or, well, then what would I do? Like, you don't know what your next step is. Like, and that was like a big thing for me. And it's still this way, right? Like, it's like, know what you want. Okay. It might be, I'm trying to get away from this thing, but it's also like, okay, where am I going towards? And that was for me that I was like, I want to be an entrepreneur. Like I want to have my own business. I want to have my own schedule. I want to have that freedom. And And so when I got clear about that, it became a lot easier. But the thing that I had this conversation with somebody like while I was in Costa Rica this was in 2010. So this is 11 years ago now. But I remember she said to me, she's like, Jennie, because she had already done this leave, right? She had already like left. She was like, you don't need to know every single step. You just need to know the first step. Like, it's like, okay, quit the job. Like, you want to start your business. So when you go back, like, what's the first thing that you need to do? Right. And that I think is a really big mistake that we make in decision making, is that we think about the long game and all of the steps that it's going to take to get there. And that's freaking overwhelming. Yeah. So it's like, cool. Know that, hold that kind of like in your back pocket. Like, it's important to know that. But the very thing that you actually need to be focusing on is like, what is just that next step? Like, it might be, okay, I'm going to get 5 clients, or it might be, I'm going to, I'm going to explore some things. Like, I'm going to maybe like work with some other people on something and explore what this is that I want. Because sometimes we're so disconnected from what we want that we're like, I don't even know what color I like anymore.
Well, I'm even thinking, like, I know we're having this conversation and you're sharing the story through a career lens.
Yes.
I'm thinking like relationships, how the go is actually just like how we get comfortable. It just becomes routine. And then at some point we just accept it. We rationalize it like, oh, well, we've been together for so long. Like, oh, I'm so close with, his family. Oh, we've got kids, like all the things that we're not even present to what we want. And, so we either rationalize it to stay or we say hell with it and we go, but we actually don't spend time and actually create the intimacy that would be required to reinvent in partnership.
Exactly. I love that, Megan. That's such an important part, because so if you don't know what you want and you're just leaving to leave and you haven't identified what you want, you're just repeating a same cycle. Mm-hmm. First thing is to figure out what it is that you want. Is that, can you do that in the situation that you're in? Can you reinvent where you are? And I've seen people do this, like in people that I've worked with in terms of career, is like they'll like shift, or they'll talk to their boss and their boss is like, sure, you can take off Fridays. And they're like, oh, so I've been thinking about this for 3 years, and all I had to do was ask, because this is the thing that I wanted, like I wanted to have Fridays off, or, or I wanted to just work on these projects and not these ones because these light me up and these don't. Right. So it's like, to be able to ask, the ability to be able to ask for what you want. But yeah, in relationships, familiar with that one. And I think that that's something that, like, you get that inkling, you may know that, it's something doesn't feel right to you, and you might speak up or you may not. And then we often will conform to stay in that place because it's comfortable, because we're scared to go in the opposite. Yeah. Scared to go in a different direction. Yeah. And that, I think, kind of leads to that. I mean, what I'm familiar with is this muscling through of like, something, but then it comes back to kind of logistics. It's like you rationalize why you should stay there. So you squeeze yourself into places I feel like you've outgrown, or things that you just don't make sense anymore for you, because you feel like you should, and you feel like it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, this is where I think gratitude practices can sometimes be dangerous, because it can be super powerful, but if you're using it to rationalize why you should stay somewhere, like you mentioned, like your girlfriends were losing jobs, so I should just be grateful. Okay. Should you, so I think that's something for everyone just to be mindful of what's your intention with gratitude. Because we will come up with all of the reasons why we should stay still, no matter how it feels in here and what our guts telling us, or intuition is telling us. Jennie, you mentioned how so many of us, we want to have it all laid out. We want to have all the plan laid out, and that your aha here, the advice you got was actually, hey, you just need to know the next step. And that sounds amazing. And I imagine a lot of people are like, are you kidding me? I need to have it all laid out. Like, I need to know. Yeah. Right. So what what's required? Like, what do you need, I guess, in here, or just to hear? I don't know. What is it that you need in order to just be okay or feel confident with, hey, I actually just need to take the next step?
Yeah. What is it, the thing that you need? Well, I mean, yeah, I think it's really common to want to have the plan laid out, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I don't, I think it's just the thing that can keep us from actually taking action, right? So if it's keeping you from taking action that you think you need to see it clearly, then, it's getting in your way. So, but I think that the thing that needs to be in place is this connection to yourself, and this connection that you have this power internally to course correct no matter what happens, like to be able to make those decisions like over and over and over again. Like, for example, it's like, if you think about a pilot on a plane, it's like they know their destination, and okay, yes, they do have it mapped out. Okay, they know how they're going. However, there's things that happen, like weather, like other planes. Have you ever been on a plane where it's like, circling to land, like there's things that happen, and they have to adjust their elevation. They have to adjust, or altitude. They have to adjust. I'm not a pilot. They have to adjust things in order to accommodate, what's happening. Right. And they're not going to always know that. But the thing is that they trust themselves, that they have the skills that they're going to be able to do that. Otherwise, they want to fly the flipping plane. Right. So it's like, they got to take off. That's the first thing that they got to do. So they're not thinking about, okay, if there's a storm, when I get to Montana, like, then what am I going to do? They're just thinking about taking off. And like, I think that that's the thing, is that it's this interesting, like, dance, I guess, with like being aware of where you're going, but then coming back to the present. It's like, this is what I have in my back pocket. This is general direction of what I'm doing, but being open to possibility that it could be actually better or different than how you even imagined it. And I've learned this and I still do this. I learned this over and over, that like, I will write out a whole plan. Like, I can't tell you how many hours I've spent in planning and trying to systematize things, when I really just erase it. And I'm like, this is stupid. And I don't even look at it, because then I'm not hitting the check marks. I'm not hitting the plan. And so for me, like, I've had to reinvent my relationship with that, and just simply focus on, okay, like, this is general direction where I'm going. And I actually go shorter term now. I used to go really long term, but what works well for me is to go shorter term, and then to just think about this next step, and then to think about my energy along the way. Like, who am I being? How am I showing up in this? And that feels way more in my control. And that is in your control, is to choose how you're showing up. And so I think, if I had to kind of like encapsulate it, that it's being connected to your intuition is like the first part. And that, I believe, is kind of the language of your intuition, is like the language of your soul, or like the language of the thing that you really, really want. And sometimes it's not very clear if you haven't been in a relationship with it. So like, you got to start cultivating that relationship. And then the second thing is to trust yourself, like that. Even if you make a good decision or a bad decision, what if you want to say it's good or bad, like, it doesn't matter, that you're going to be able to course correct, and you're going to be able to figure it out, because you are powerful, and like, you're going to know the next step. And like, I encourage people in this, when they're developing this relationship with their intuition and trusting themselves, to start small, because you don't have to go for like the big kahuna. I was listening to this like podcast, and they were talking about, actually, I think it was in Good to Great, the book it's called Good to Great by Jim Collins. Okay. He talks about, using like missiles and cannonballs, and like this musket balls and cannonballs. And like, musket balls are smaller and cannonballs are huge. Mm-hmm. And he's like, what they did, and I'm probably like, I'm not good at history, so we're gonna. You're
not a pilot and you're not a historian. That's okay.
Yeah, be with me for a minute. But this analogy, I think, is really important. Is that he talks about like, get familiar with the musket balls, because those are the smaller ones. So what they would do in war is they would like aim with those first, and they require less of the power, like less of the juice to get this there. So like they're playing with the smaller ones to get their aim down, and then they use the cannonballs, right? Because that requires more juice and more energy, right? So if you think about, like, if you're thinking about leaving your job or making a really big decision, you know, maybe don't start with that one. Like start with, like, you know, like, I don't know, something else. If, you know, just to start, I mean, you could start with that one. I mean, heck, like, I mean, I kind of did, but like, you know, it's just that, like, if you're wanting to warm up to it, I think there's nothing wrong with that. I know some people are like, just do the thing. It's like, I mean, we're not looking at trying to be reckless. We're just looking at trying to, like, get in relationship with this. It's just like, if you were dating someone, you don't, like, automatically be like, okay, hey, you want to get married? Like, you get to know them, you get to like them, love them, trust them, and then you marry them or whatever, you know?
Your musket balls are like a weekend away, or meeting the family, or, you know, it's meeting the friends. It's like before you take the
and you're, like, navigating it, and you're course correcting, and you're figuring, it's a dance, right? So you're figuring that out along the way, and then you can, like, you know, so you just like you would date someone, I think it's the same thing as, like, you're dating your intuition, and it's a relationship that you're consistently evolving over time. And I really believe that is, like, kind of the birthplace of our potential. Like, I think if we're not connected with that, it's going to be really hard to maximize your professional and your personal potential. It's just something that, for me, that I really rely on. And I think that, and I see when my clients do that, things completely shift for them. And
totally, because that's the compass. That's at the point where you're actually the one in charge of your life versus it's happening to you because of all this stuff out here. Something I think it's really important that I want to highlight what you said is this: trust in yourself is not determined by whether or not you made a good decision or bad decision. It's trusting your ability to course correct. I see this a lot with clients that I talk to. They want to feel confident, and really they've got that interlaced with, they want to be certain. Like, they want to be confident this thing is going to work out. It's like, oh, you just want to know it's going to happen. Like, and then when it doesn't, then it becomes like, oh, they don't feel confident, or they don't trust themselves anymore. And it's like, wait a minute. That's not what that is. It's regardless of the outcome, you're going to be okay, which I'm thinking of, like, all the times I call you and you remind me of, like, who I am, that, like, hey, you're going to be okay. And you put that back in my space. But yeah, that's the difference here. And I think, you know, before anyone takes a leap like this, whether it's musket ball size or cannonball, we're wired to immediately go to all the reasons why we can't trust ourselves or why it's not going to work out. And we forget all the reasons why we're badass people who have done some awesome shit that, like, you know, here's all the reasons why it would.
Yeah, like, less of the pro and con list and more of, like, the, like, possibility, right? What would this make possible for me? Okay, well, at least this is setting me up to maybe get into the thing that I want to get into, right? If you don't leave the job, then you don't, there's no possibility with you becoming, you know, I mean, well, you don't have to leave the job in order, like, you could start a side hustle, right? And I kind of was, and I want to say that too, that I was doing that. So I didn't immediately go from corporate to my own business. I had my business. So my degree's in nutrition. So I was doing nutrition coaching on the side out of the gym that I was working at, which I had full permission to do. So I was doing that as I was, you know, and then when I left, like, I took that as, like, the full time, you know, and then that was grew into that, because that's what felt good for me. But I think that, yeah, that's such an important thing, is that, you know, we have this tendency to feel like, well, you know, I think that this is like an important place to look, is I was kind of jotting down notes this morning about this, and like, the challenge arises when we're looking externally for why, like you said, like, why it won't work. And that's just more, that's like, if we could just, like, literally be like, that's logic, right? Like, your logic will talk you out of your heart-based decisions every single time.
Yes. It's trying to make it reasonable. And I'll quote you. You've said to me many times that, you know, when we're making a heart-based decision, the heart is unreasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like when it's unreasonable, it's like, oh, like, okay, like that's the thing. It's like, you can't explain that to someone, right? It's like, it's the same thing as like when you love someone, when you truly love them, you can't really explain it to them, because guess what? It's like a feeling, right? And your limbic brain doesn't understand words. So this is the thing, is that like, but like you're going to try to put words around it. So you try to say things, but sometimes you just don't feel like it makes sense, you know? And like that's your emotion. Like it only understands emotion.
Yeah.
So like, that's the thing, is that like, you can actually start to like feel that out, right? You can be like, oh my gosh, like you can actually start to think about the experience that you'd be creating for yourself and what that would actually feel like to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, this is something that really helped me too, is I was going to therapy during this time that I was thinking about corporate or going out on my own. And my therapist did this with me, which I thought was a cool exercise. It's something that I still take on. And this is how I started to get in connection with this too, is she said, okay, I want you to sit and visualize this for a minute. And I think visualization is such a great way to get in touch with this emotion and get out of the pro and con list. Like, put it away. Like, you can do it. It's fine. I think I love to do like a SWOT analysis, some pros and cons. Like, it can be helpful. And like what we're talking about here is really shifting into this other place and cultivating that relationship. And so what she did is she said to me, okay, I want you to imagine. So maybe if you're up against like a decision right now that you could do this, like imagine being at the place that you are right now, a year from now.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine being there. Like, what is it going to feel like? She like had me close my eyes and really be in my body and notice that, and like really imagine myself being there and what that would feel like. And then she had me open my eyes. It was like just a couple of minutes, and she was talking about it, and then kind of gave me some silence. And then she's like, all right, kind of like shake that off. And then she's like, I want you to imagine, and she gave me my other thing that I was thinking about. She's like, I want you to imagine running your own business and what that would be like. And that's all she said. She didn't give me, and you're doing this, and like, you don't want to it up too much, but like, just think about the two things, right? Mm-hmm. And the difference in my body, it was so clear. You know, the first one, I felt kind of tight and constricted and just kind of like, meh, you know, like, like, cool. I don't know. You know, it was just like, not really. And then when she would talk about the other one, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Like, this is so, and that's what I'm talking about. Like, that's the limbic brain. You're connected to that emotion. You may not be able to explain it to somebody else why you're going out on your own, because it seems like you crazy because you're leaving a stable job to go do something else. And that's like, I think that visualization process can make it really clear for you. And then you can start to take either musket ball or cannonball steps to that. But that's what I'm talking about, is that I don't have to sit all the time with that now, right? When I'm up against decision, it's clear. I'm like, this is my gut. And actually your gut is usually the first thing, but it's silent. It's pretty quiet. I shouldn't say it's silent. It's like pretty quiet, right? But the other one is like, but I was thinking that like, maybe you could, you know, have this for lunch and have this for lunch. Or I was thinking, blah, blah, blah. Like there's like a lot of overthinking.
Yeah. Yeah. It's chatter. Yeah.
And that's that rationalization.
Oh my gosh. I feel like we could have a whole separate conversation about all the ways you can actually build your muscle with your intuition. Like for me, when I decided to leave my job, it came through running, you know, so there's, right now it's not running like at all. So, you know, it shifts too. So I feel like, I mean, again, anyone who's watching this, if you just want some other ideas, ping us, like we can just brainstorm, because, and the important thing here too, is what works for us might not work for you. So it's really, it's trial and error. The thing I want to get back to in this conversation, Jenny, is, okay, so you had that visualization, words, my goodness, where you're taking this leap and you're not afraid. And I imagine once you took action on it, you sent the email, that life wasn't butterflies and rainbows from there. So, we all wish it would be, right? Like, but it's not.
Yeah.
So what happened after? What was that process like?
Yeah. So I came back and I was like really excited, and the thing is I had lived in the town that I lived in for a while. So I had established some clients and like, a reputation for myself. So like I knew people. And so I will say that made it a little bit easier for me to make the transition into working for myself. And I was just very clear. I got very clear about how many clients I needed in order to have the income that I wanted to have. And I gave myself kind of a timeline to get there. And not that like, I was like, okay, like if I don't get there, I'm not doing it. I was like, I'm going to make this happen.
Yeah.
And I really trusted myself, but I got a lot of support. Like I didn't have a coach at this point. I didn't really know the coaching world at all, but I was still working with my therapist. And then I signed up for some for some like professional development. So then I was in a community of other women business owners, so that like I had not only some education and like but I remember like I just like really leaned into trusting myself in this moment. Like I sometimes would stay up all night. I was so excited, like working on my website and getting some things set up and like writing out, workouts for people, because I was so excited to have the freedom. So that's what I put my attention on, the things that I wasn't able to do that now I was so grateful that I was able to do. And yeah, there were things that were hard because I was like, man, like, if I don't hit this client goal, like I might not be able to pay rent. If I don't do this, then I might, but that wasn't what I focused on. I focused on I was so excited that I was able to do like it the way that I had envisioned it. And I didn't really understand project planning at this point. I didn't understand really visualization or getting connected to what I wanted, but that's actually what I did. I just was really oriented to that and really oriented to taking care of myself, because that's when I really got in touch with like, I need to have space. So like when I thought about my schedule, I was like, all right, I want to have like, this morning off and this evening off. And I remember like dating myself too. Like I would like make myself dinners and like and I was single at the time, like, and I would like have like wine and candlelit dinners for myself. But I was just like, I'm able to do this. And like, I'm so excited because I was not able to do this before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I don't even have that business anymore. So like, that's the thing, is that like, that's what I envisioned. I thought that was it, right? That was the thing that I wanted. And that's what I was going to be doing for the rest of my life. And I moved. So I had to give up my whole business. And I didn't really realize like how important it was to me when I moved, until I let it go. And I was like, oh my gosh. And there was a few other businesses that I did. And now I'm coaching, but like all of that, in retrospect, like all of those things that I did are why I'm here. And if you would have told me 4 years ago that I would be doing life and leadership coaching, I would have looked at you and been like, no, no, I'm not. Yeah. So that's the thing, is you just don't know. And that's where I think it comes into like, this is what I think. This is what I think. This is what I think at like, right now. And then you end up being there. But there was a lot of questioning along the way, for sure.
Yeah. So I think this is a very real fear for people, if they're to take some sort of leap outside of what's comfortable, is that it's the fears that come into play. So you mentioned like sometimes, it was like, okay, if I don't get this client, I'm not going to be able to pay rent. But what's powerful, and I've noticed this too, just the entrepreneurial roller coaster, is that fear isn't as loud. It's not, it's a fact. Like if you look at your money in, money out, whatnot, that you need that. But from this place of trust, you can show up from that place to work on hitting that goal versus this place of fear. And it's a totally different experience. And also highlighting that you got supported, like I'm not reliable for remembering how awesome I am all the time. So, reaching out to the people that know us, that can reflect us, whether it is a coach or a support group or, becoming a part of some community where that's actually what you're committed to. because us as human beings aren't reliable to see that in ourselves, because we're thinking about all the things that are wrong, or like, don't compliment my hair, I haven't washed it in 3 days, like, like things like that. But and it makes the things that are awesome about us, we put it in our blind spot, we can't see it. So support is so necessary.
Yes, Megan. Like, I think, as you're saying that, it's like, I don't know if you have like a piece of art in your house, like you probably walk by all the time and you don't even notice that it's there. Right. So like, but if that piece of art were to come down, you would notice it. Right. But someone else coming into your apartment, they might like go over to that piece of art and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. Where did you get it? And comment on it. Like, but you see it all the time, but you don't even notice it's there, because your brain as human, it's human nature for us to conserve energy. So we're not aware of the art in our house. Like, so we need other people to point out those things. So whether it's something really great or it's something that is getting in your way, that like you can't see it. And I like to say, like, you can't see the picture when you're in the frame, because and that's essentially what getting support does, is it separates that out. So then you can start to distinguish, like, oh my gosh, like this is the thing that I do, and this is really what I want. And to your point, the other thing is like your energy, I think this is so important. Your energy matters when you're getting to a goal. Yeah. So if you think that you can't do it, like, this is the thing, is that like, and this is something that I'm really working on right now, is I'm going through a launch right now and being really aware of where my energy is, because it's so different if I'm like talking to people and I'm like, I feel like I need a client, you know what I mean? Like, or if I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to attract the people in this program that like are going to really benefit from this program, and the people that I can really support. That is a lot different. And that's what I'm talking about, is like, that's the attraction, yes, rather than like the fear, right? And coming from scarcity. And that's the thing, is that you can get to the goal. I have no doubt.
Action even.
Yeah, you can get to the goal, but you could do it in completely different ways. And this person could get there and they could have checked the box and built the empire that you also want. And they could have done it, you don't know, outside looking in. You don't know if they've done it from a place of good energy or from a place of scarcity, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, and you can tell, but over time, like that shit's not sustainable if you're doing it from force, if you're doing it from fear, if you're doing it from proving yourself, which we were talking about this earlier before we got on this call. Like, if you're doing it from all those places, and I know that all too well, is that like, I did a lot of my stuff from trying to prove myself, and I still catch myself doing it. And I have to be like, okay, that doesn't feel good. Like, my energy matters. And I want to think about how I'm making a living. Like, I want to make a lot of money, but it matters how I do it to me, and that's, I mean, if we're just thinking that, okay, once I get there, then everything will be easy. Nope. It's not true, because I was there and it's not true.
If the way in which you're going about the goal is actually depleting or at sacrifice or something in here, then when you get to the goal, you might not be excited about it. It might not be fulfilling. You might just be like, oh, okay. And then is that worth it? So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. And Jenny, I know it's something, just the process in which, we approach our goals or we create our lives. I know it's something that's really, it's a passion for you, especially this aha you've had, like, oh, I don't have to go through life this way. And I know it's a big part of the work that you're looking to do in the world. And you mentioned this program and this launch that you're in. So please tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah. So it's Well and Wild Method, which is like a 6-month program for women entrepreneurs to really have them get this clarity of what they want, be connected to it on a regular basis, and connected to their intuition and their higher vision and higher self. And then alignment, which is like aligning their actions with those things. Yeah. And so really the real value of it that I hear people get from it when they go through this program is feeling fulfilled, having that peace of mind, and really, I like to call it unshakable joy. Usually people are like, I'm happier. But it's like, there's a difference between having this unshakable joy of just like it's this confidence of just like, I know that like I always have a choice in how my life is going. And one woman in the program that recently came out, one of the things that she did was she so she came in and she was like, it was a time thing. She's like, I don't know if I have time to do this, right? Which that was my story too. I don't know if I have time to actually invest in myself. And yet, like, I know I need to do it. And this is the very thing. It's like we talked about creating that margin, creating that space so that we can have that contemplative practice. It could be running, journaling, hiring a coach. It could be anything. Mm-hmm. But when she actually was like, I need to do it. And so she enrolled, and she ended up working less. So she stopped taking meetings after 6. She was actually taking off a lot of her Fridays. And she ended up coming in 76% over her income goal. So she did this while working less, made more money. She's taking better care of herself. She is just like, she got like invited to do a national speaking gig, like for this like huge women-owned company. So like, she's like, the biggest thing that she said, she's like, I just always thought that I had to work really, really hard. And I'm realizing I don't have to work that hard. Yeah. And you don't believe that until you actually do it. And you said this earlier. It's like, I mean, like, I think this is so important, is that we think we need to believe in ourselves in order to do the thing. That's actually just a bunch of BS that is keeping you from doing it. You think you need to have something before you can do it. You think you need to be confident. Like you were saying, you need to be confident before you can do it. Consider that you actually become that along the way through the actions. And that's what I really saw with her and like through her transition. And so, yeah, this program, we're starting at the end of this month. So we just had someone enroll, and we're enrolling a few people. So we only take 5 women, and it's a hybrid program. So there's some group coaching. So you get to be around those women that are up to similar things than you. And then we also do private so that they can get that customized approach. And, yeah, it's based on a lot of the things that I have been through in my life. And that's why it's called Well and Wild, is because it's really focused on creating this well-being. Yep. And also living a life of your wildest dreams, which sometimes feels like impossible. And we
often feel like we have to pit those against each other, and you don't.
Yeah. No. And it's like, that's what I love about what I do, is being able to see this. Cause even, I mean, obviously, like, I'm human, and I have to do this. I mean, I still work with my coach on this, right? Cause you can't see the picture when you're in the frame, but it's so cool to be on this side of it and see these women doing this. Cause it's like confirmation to me too, that like, oh yeah, this shit works. Yeah. You know, like I see it in my life, but it's kind of like, you still get imposter syndrome. You're like, did I make that happen? Or was that luck? Right? It's right. Like, no, you made it happen. Own it. You're a meaning making machine. At least make up the story that serves you and like, you know, and go with that, because like that is going to build on itself. So that's been the coolest part, is like just getting, like, seeing that over and over again, that like these women can do that.
So that's so powerful. We'll definitely put links to how people can find you, and, you know, anything about the program in the show notes and the comments of this, so that people can get that information. One of the things about this whole series, this interview series, is, I mean, the name of this is May We Know Them. So looking at the strong women in the world, and putting them on blast in a good way. So like shining a spotlight on them, so we know like who are people to turn to. And just along the theme of support here that you've been mentioning, we've been talking about through this whole call, you know, I'd love for you to mention who are some of the strong women, just the people in your corner that we should know about, just to get some of that support under us, whether it's following or a book or what have you.
Yeah. Well, Megan, you're definitely one of them. So have friends like Megan. So it's mutual, because you have helped me through so many things. And I mean, and that just goes to say coaching, right? Because I think I mean, you and I both know we're in this because we went through it personally, and we see the power of the work. So I still work with a coach, and I think, you know, find a coach. Like if you're interested in that, talk to a couple coaches. Like, you got to find the people that you are, you know, like that makes sense to you and like that feel good. Like listen to your gut, right? Because they're going to help you win. Like you're going to help them. It's a win-win. You want to find that win-win situation. It's a partnership for sure. And I'm saying that because there's actually something that like I've been noticing that like I want to dive more into my spiritual practices. So I'm like looking to work with more of a spiritual coach right now, rather than like on ontological, which is how Megan and I are trained. And so it's like what calls to you, you know, in the moment of your life. And that's going to be different, you know, depending on whatever you're going through. So that's one thing. I think that like, you know, if you love community support, look for different communities. For me, you know, one of the things that I did was like, I was reading a course on miracles, and I haven't been great about my commitment with reading that, but like I joined a book club, right? Like to help with that process, because I was like, that'll help me stay committed. So it's like finding the support structures that work for you. One of my favorite books, I brought it over here, is Women Who Run with Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. And if you're a woman, you need to read this book. Actually, even if you're a man, whatever you identify as, like, I feel like you need to read this book, because it is like, it talks about this like powerful force that's inside of us and how to connect with that. But it does it through story, which again, like comes to the limbic brain, and it helps get that emotion and pull that emotion out so that you can start to understand it. And then she dissects it a little bit after she tells you the story. So I would definitely recommend that book. And then, yeah, I mean, like I'm a big meditator. So like I love doing courses and stuff. So Insight Timer has courses on it that you can do. There's one woman that I follow. I think her name is Mama Goddess. She has Kim Newegg, but she goes by Mama Goddess. And she has a course on there that's connecting with your wildly intuitive self. And it's like a 10-day course. I think it's like 10 or 15 minutes a day. Highly recommend that course, because she talks about these different types of intuition, how to connect with it. So if you're interested in like diving into that realm, and I'm sure that I would have so much more things, but that's what's on the top of my mind.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Well, Jennie, thank you so much for spending some time with us today and sharing your story and your brilliance. And like, I'm just over here, like, it's one thing to hear your story and be inspired by it, but then you like throw in the science of the brain and things. And I'm like, I've got like this whole other awareness of how weird we are as humans, and cool too, but how we get in our way in ways that we don't even realize. We'll share all the information so that people can connect with you, and including, you know, a link to the book and, you know, to Mama Goddess and whatnot, just to help people out. And thanks so much for being here today.
Well, thank you, Megan. I really appreciate you inviting me, and it's been an honor to be on here. And I'm so excited just to know you and be a part of your journey too. So thank you all for listening. And I'm happy to connect with anyone that is interested or has questions that wants to follow up. I'm happy to answer any questions I can, or direct you in a place where I can support you.
Yeah, I mean, community can start here if you're looking for it.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much. Thanks for watching, listening, all the things.